December 10th, we expect a treaty to be signed in Washington by Reagan and Gorbachev and work done on a strategic arms reduction treaty. What will be the effect of that on the free world if that goes through as planned and is ratified by the Senate?
To me, I think it has just one positive effect, and it is, you remember before the election how the liberals and Soviets show Mr. Reagan like a nuclear war leader and devil who will start. I remember some politician in the United States, they even try to say he will start the war tomorrow. Even Amy Carter was worried about it. And just one positive effect is it shows it is absolutely lie. Mr. Reagan is not such a person. But on the other hand, I think most other things are negative, unfortunately, because our middle-range and short-range missiles in Europe, they had strategic importance. Soviets middle-range missiles don't have. They cannot reach United States, but our missiles, they were able to reach very deep Soviet territory, almost Moscow, for sure Leningrad and the others, where is the largest concentration of the first echelon units, the European part of Soviet Union. And if you think, I believe it is 7 minutes or something to fly there.
13.
13. It is time when the soldiers have time running from the beds to the front yard or whatever, and be ready to move. Before they move from the barracks, they are burned. And I think it is really, it makes them worry. So once we take them out, they don't have problem about it. Of course, they are much stronger with conventional forces than we are. I don't believe our ground forces can fight Soviet ground forces. To me, it is impossible. And politically, if you look at it again, Soviets took the initiative. The propaganda, including Gorbachev, go already through whole world. It is victory of the new thinking, of new Gorbachev thinking. You can see his speeches. Because you remember, before Mr. Reagan put the missiles to Europe, they said, we will never talk to him if he put them there. And it is typical example how you have to work with Russians. He put them there, they organized the peace movement, and the Greens party in Germany, which is generally hippies and homosexuals, organized against us, to demonstrate. And again, we are stupid. We think that if we do something, everybody must love it. It is impossible, because look at just how many communists are there. We can do anything, they will be against us. Now we put the missiles there, and they said, we will never talk to Mr. Reagan if he wouldn't take them out. He didn't take them out. Did they talk to him? Sure. How Gorbachev was running to meet him twice and say, look, let's make deal, and go behind your back and deceive you again. It shows us the Soviets are not as macho as they play game. If you show them, you are tough. Of course, give them one finger, they eat whole arm. It is simple like that. Now, when we achieve this fantastic thing, military and politically, we will liquidate it. And now they say, you see, you peace movement, you were worried, you were disoriented, you were demoralized because you didn't win. But if you are patient, you look at it, finally we got it, what we want, And I think it is really negative. And of course, behind that, as you see today, newspaper are already strategic missiles. Already Soviets brought proposal, I think, to Geneva. And Gorbachev said most important discussion with Mr. Reagan is Star War and so. So they will go finally to the main goal, which are our strategic forces. And to me, it is tragedy.
It may work out very similar to the way in which SALT I and the ABM Treaty worked out. Initial euphoria, followed by a questioning period, and then a clear recognition of it being a major victory for the Soviets and a drawdown in U.S. forces. if you look at the effect of, say, the INF Treaty, it certainly doesn't change things from the NATO perspective. The forces that NATO has to contend with are not materially affected by the lack of the SS-20, because the SS-20 really doesn't have much of a role that you can see in NATO. On the other hand, the withdrawal certainly of the U.S. forces and the German Pershings does greatly facilitate, or significantly facilitate, Soviet attack plans. There is a major weapon system, potentially mobile, that they assume would be prudently managed, that they no longer have to contend with. So it does facilitate their planning and give them much more flexibility in doing what they would like to do. I think ultimately it will be seen as a victory for the Soviets.
It ups the timetable for when they can safely march across Europe.
Yeah. I mean, what does it say when you have half a dozen major treaties where the Soviets are violating each one, and independent of that, the United States goes ahead with another treaty?
Well, you wrote a paper on that, why the Soviets violate arms control treaties for the CIA. What's the answer? Because we let them?
Well, that was a very interesting research project. It was one of the most enjoyable tasks I've had in many a year. Because what I did is I formed a set of questions dealing with the problem, trying to understand how the Soviets viewed violations of arms control, their motivation, how they saw the treaties, you know, a wide variety of aspects. And I independently had a number of different people, former high-level communist leaders, answer the questions. And it was amazing when the responses came back. They all fit, you know, hand in glove with one another. There were no contradictory statements. They all had exactly the same opinion. They said the same things in slightly different words. And several of the papers even started out and said that the first question I should have asked dealt with ideology, because if you don't understand ideology, you can't understand the Soviet system. And it was one of those rare occasions when you go out to a variety of independent sources, they all come back, they're saying the same thing, and you can really start then to get into the meat because you don't have a lot of contradictions to resolve. Everybody was just lined up in unanimity in terms of what were the Soviet objectives.
Are these Soviets in the free world?
Yes. These are former officials. For example, General Sejna.
Okay, what did they say?
Arms control is mainly a strategic military and intelligence operation. There's absolutely no interest in arms control as we in the West see it. The process is undertaken by the Soviets to stop U.S. military developments, to gain intelligence on U.S. military actions, to learn more about particular technologies that can be then stolen and applied to Soviet systems, to exacerbate relations among the U.S. and its allies. I think those are sort of the primary. The one other one would be to provide really the patina of respectability under which additional technology transfer and financial arrangements can take place. And you know, these are the objectives of arms control as seen from the Soviet perspective. Violations are deliberate, are planned well in advance. Cheating and deception is widely employed. It is a very important state activity. One of the most important activities, so important that is not undertaken frivolously. It's one in which the top leadership participates and actively participates. And in the case of the arms control treaties, not only is it planned in advance, but they also plan how they will respond to Western claims that the Soviets are cheating. All very well thought out in advance, a very carefully controlled and orchestrated political, military, strategic operation.
President Reagan says that we will be able to verify any treaty we sign. I believe he's a dreamer. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, he has to say that. I mean, he has no choice. We're not going to sign one that we can't verify by definition. Now,
we don't have the technical capability to verify a treaty, and we do know that they have violated treaties. I don't think Ronald Reagan wants to know that.
Well, he knows that. He's well aware of that. What game is being played at the present time is hard to say. There was a recent intelligence estimate that was widely reported in the newspapers 2 weeks ago, which was a detailed analysis of verification capabilities, and it said, you had less than a 20% chance of catching a violation, as I recall, something like that.
But Ronald Reagan continues to say this. It's like he knows, but he doesn't want to know, and he just doesn't want to have to think about it, talk about it, respond to the question. So he simply keeps repeating the statement. We won't sign a treaty that we can't verify.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, we don't even know what the SS-20 is, or how many there are, or where there are, so I'm not sure how we can ever verify how many there won't be.
Could it be used as an anti-ballistic missile, the SS-20? Is there a possibility the SS-20 can be used as an anti-ballistic missile?
Well, I think the SS-20 could be used in a variety of ways. Certainly that is one. Another one that people forget is as a strategic missile. Initially, estimates on its range were in excess of 6,000 kilometers. When you look at the SS-20, the way in which it's projected, it simply does not make much sense to me as we portray it, which suggests that either my logic is totally upside down, which is of course possible, or that we are grossly misled as to what the SS-20 is and what its role is. If you look at the number of nuclear targets in NATO, which is an area they don't want to destroy, if you look at it when targeting is an easy task, I think it'd be very difficult to find much over 200 targets in Europe. If you look at it, in a crisis situation when targets may be difficult to find, you may have a hard time finding more than 50 targets. Of those targets, none of them are large yield targets. I think most of them would probably be adequately attacked with a 10 KT kiloton weapon or less, but we attribute something over 100 kilotons to the SS-20. And we're talking about numbers that suggest warheads from anywhere from 1,000 to 5,000 warheads. Now this is just ludicrous when it comes to covering the European target base. It's ludicrous because there aren't that many targets, and it's ludicrous because you have so many other nuclear systems that already cover the targets, between tactical air, cruise missiles, short-range missiles, and ICBMs that have been tested and planned for employment at theater ranges. So what do you really need an SS-20 for? Is it really what we think it is, or is it something else? How many really exist? We don't know.
Or where they are.
Or where they are. So given all those uncertainties, one has to ask, what are we verifying? And if we don't know how many are there in the first place, or what they're used for, is there any hope of verification? I would say no. But I haven't read the treaty.
Everybody's waiting to read this treaty.
Like other treaties, it'll be something you wait for, and when you get it, you'll say, oh, golly, do I have to wade through this turgid mess? It's supposed to be 200 pages long. And that'll be a real mess to read.
So contrived.
Yeah.
By Shevardnadze and by Schultz, supposedly.
I believe that every treaty so far of significance has been a failure in terms of our achieving the objectives that we sought to achieve in the treaty. And I'm not sure why this treaty should be any different.
Have S-11s been mobile for 15 years, or are they really only in silos?
We have been told in the last 2 weeks that indeed we now know that they have been mobile for 15 years, for 10 to 15 years.
And what does that do to us when we sign this treaty?
Well, that says we also got serious problems in the strategic area that are not much different than the theater area. We really don't know where the missiles are. Verification is one of those things that the population knows full well that the Soviets cheat on everything. And so verification is the centerpiece. You can't have a treaty unless it can be verified. And so rather than be serious about that, what the administration has done is trying to figure out a way to write a treaty in terms that are such that they can claim it can be verified. So you had things like, well, we're going to count silos, not missiles. Or we're going to count launchers, not missiles.
How about silos with wooden missiles inside?
Entirely possible. And then the verification, of course, is adequate, or it is sufficient. And of course, again, the thought there goes back to the beliefs of these people that we spoke about before, that you only need 100 missiles to destroy the other side, and that all these large stockpiles are meaningless. So really, verification is important. The nature of the agreement isn't important. All that is important is that we continue having more agreements. And I'm not being facetious. I think that is, the dominant reason. The only sort of constraint on the people that are really negotiating this is, well, what do they feel they can get by Congress or get by the American people? And it's got to be sufficiently credible on the surface, or sufficiently complex so that it looks credible on the surface, that it will get passed or ratified. But today it really doesn't even matter if it's ratified.
Exactly.
It'll still be obeyed like it was in SALT II.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my next point. Probably it'll be difficult to get 2/3 of the Senate to ratify this, but the Reagan administration is bent on complying with this treaty.
Oh, it's as though they make their decisions according to what they see will be good press in the Eastern media.
Well, we have an ABM treaty that is violated, fully violated by the Soviets, yet Reagan continues on the narrow interpretation of this treaty. We should declare that we are breaking that treaty and give them 6 months' notice or less. It is a most ridiculous situation, and I believe if Americans would take the time to listen to the facts that you're presenting and that we all know, they would come to the same conclusions. And there does seem to be a mesmerizing of this nation.
But I think the climate which was created by Soviets and liberals is such I don't think it is possible for President Reagan not to sign it. Don't you think so?
Well, he can do anything he wants.
Yeah.
A whole conservative Republican movement in this country would rally around him if he decided not to sign it.
Election year and situation in Europe, everywhere in all war, where he was presented like the devil who wants to war, and I think they again push us to the corner where we have to accept it. I mean, our administration, not all American people.
Well, he would not sign it now. His pride is at stake.
Well, his Secretary of State, in agreeing to it, indicates that he will sign it. The idea of George Shultz, agreeing to a treaty that hadn't been approved by the president for signature is certainly possible, but I'd say highly improbable. And indeed, that may be why you've had the strong speeches that Reagan has made over the past 3 weeks against Soviets and some of their efforts to maintain this strong anti-Soviet image, so that when he does put it forth, it'll get passed, because how could any person that is so strongly fearful of the Soviets propose a treaty that is not good?
You really think that's the psychology of that?
I can't think of any other real reason.
It's hard to think of any reason why he does what he does.
Many people put forth that scenario back in 1981.
They did.
Yes. In the sense that they said, watch out, because, arms control will reemerge, and if a conservative president, puts forth an arms control treaty, it will get passed, while had a liberal president put forth an arms control treaty, it would have been shot down in the same treaty.
Tell us about Maskirovka.
Maskirovka, same reason like the others which we discussed. Problem is, here in the United States, Maskirovka is almost higher than deception or disinformation. If you go to Soviet Union, Maskirovka is so normal and regular training, which nobody think actually it is deception. That's the problem. Of course, different things is strategic, Maskirovka, operation, tactical, because in Soviet system, everyone from simple soldier to chief of general staff has responsibility for Maskirovka. It is not just. And again, for us, the most important is strategic Maskirovka, and I think part of the things that Joe discussed, how we can control them, such a territory, such a society where is everything so secret. I just can tell you example, which I read in Soviet press, which is today a little bit more open. The, two mothers lost sons in Afghanistan. Each of them had just one son, and one of them go to the military headquarters and ask the Politcommissar for the gravestone for the son because she doesn't have money. Or he gave her hell how she can ask such a things and discuss such a things if it is secret because her son was killed in Afghanistan. And she said if she will continue to discuss it with neighbors, and so she will be really in troubles. So it is part of Maskirovka, part of deception. The other, which shows you what society it is, the other mother complained because when she got the certificate, the son was shot. For that, because you have the certificate, you have some privileges. For example, buy medicine, drugs, which they have shortage, for example, antibiotics. And she cries, she said, every time when she go to drugstore to pick up the drugs, she must show the certificate her son was killed. It is her privilege for that to get it. And she said, every time it remind me, my just one son was killed. Can you imagine psychologically what society it is? And go back to Maskirovka, which is even the grave is Maskirovka actually. The strategic Maskirovka is the most important because you have in Soviet Union false military bases, false airports, where are rubber airplanes or rubber missiles. So I wonder how we really know which is real and which is not. You know, because when I was deputy commander of engineer troops, they have responsibility for the technical part of the Maskirovka. Generally, the strategic Maskirovka is decided by General Staff, Chief of General Staff, and Defense Council. But technically, already that time we built false bases, false airports, everything, you know, from plastic. So, to me, we go back to this. How to control the Soviets? It is impossible. I cannot believe it. I can tell you examples when, remember, Khrushchev make proposal cut 1 million military forces. In Czechoslovakia we cut 15,000. We didn't cut one soldier. You know, everything was deception. We retired the old officers which supposed to retire next month. We were recruited young officers. How you control these things? And I think again the Soviets, where the operation administration and the general staff, which they have major responsibility for strategic Maskirovka, I would like to be there today, where already these missiles are hid in Siberia or wherever, which we will never find them in the jungle and in the forest. And it is strategic Maskirovka, which again we don't have any, because it's difficult to hide something in the United States, but it is very easy. I just can tell you how the things work when things go out. When was discussion, Defense Council cut the 15,000 troops by deception. One officer said so when he go home from General Staff in the street train. Next day, KGB immediately investigate who passed this information. He didn't say this deception, he just said it will be cut. Even that things were wrong. They took off all panels in minister office, look for microphones and everything. You know, it is crazy society, I tell you. It is, for Americans it is difficult to understand it, understand psychology of Russian man. If I can say something little bit about that psychology, which I always say the Americans think everywhere is Texas. Everybody think like American thinks. Everybody act like Americans act. In 1956, they sent to Czechoslovakia a new advisor, so-called General Khrushchev, which is not Khrushchev, but Khrushchev. Now, we, first meeting, comrades, we together, we have to kill the American imperialist and so. Nothing new. You hear it thousands times every day. Now we find out from his wife his story. In the 30s, when KGB arrested and executed thousands of officers and marshals, he was also arrested. He was not executed just because he never signed he is spy. And because he never signed he is spy, he got just 25 years. If he signed it, he got that penalty. In Czechoslovakia, we had joke, two guys met on the street, and one guy said, "Where you been?" He said, "In jail." He said, "What for?" He said, "For nothing." "How much you got?" He said, 15 years. The guy said, "Look, we used to be best friends. Don't lie to me. For nothing is just 10 years. But because Soviet Union is bigger, there was 25. Now, when the war started, and you can see how they are paranoid, Hitler was very successful. Before war, he made deception, which was passed to Czechoslovak President Beneš, like most Russian military leaders are spies for Germany. And this stupid Beneš passed it to Stalin, and the paranoid arrested, executed these officers. Now, when the war started, they didn't have enough officers, so the propagandists go to the Siberia and talk to these officers who were still in life and said, if you go to the war, you are free. Of course, anyone prefer to die in the war, at least you have bread before you die, or soup. In Siberia, you will be frozen. This guy finished the war in Berlin under Zhukov command, chief of staff of one army, hero of Russia, 3-star general, medals everywhere, including on the back, because they don't have space enough on the front. And war was over, he asked for vacation. His wife lives in Minsk, White Russia. They say, of course. He took the train at the railroad station in Minsk, didn't wait his wife by KGB. They say, Camera General, welcome home. You got 25 years. You were 8 years in jail before the war started. You were 4 years in war, it is 12. You have 13 more. Ladies and gentlemen, all of them back to Siberia. Can you believe it? How you can prove better you are patriot of the country than if you go die for the country and go back to Siberia. So when Khrushchev took power, especially Zhukov, he signed the guarantee for them. They rehabilitate them, they go out, they put him to Crimea to give him better tent than he got in Siberia. And 2 months later, he came to Czechoslovakia. Now, I told you, first meeting. Now, when we learn about him from his wife, I was fishing with him, and I asked him, Camera General, how it is possible? If this happened to me, I will hate the party, I will hate the country. And he said just one thing, John, you don't understand one thing, I'm Russian. And that's it. It explained to you everything, you know. What is the psychology, what you have the conspiracy to hide everything. Look at that today, Gorbachev opened a little bit the glasnost. Not big deal. For us here it is nothing. But people protest. They cannot believe it, they can do that. Even simple people protest against these things. Intellectuals, journalists, they like it. But simple Russian men, he cannot imagine this could happen. You know, because they teach them 70 years, lie, deceive everybody. And of course this is low level, but it goes from down all over up. Deception and maskirovka, part of deception. And they will do everything possible to hide from us what they have, because every time when was some Soviet proposal how to cut the military budget or military forces and so, every time when Defense Council discuss it, they discuss how to make military forces stronger. I never saw one proposal where they said, yes, we will really cut it. No, we have to go with this proposal. We have to show something, make imperialists sure we want to do that. But what we will do, make our military forces stronger than they have. And it will be same today. I cannot believe it. They can give up, build up the strongest military forces in the world. Because without that, they cannot control society, they cannot control satellites, they cannot use the pressure in whole world and finally establish what they want. It's impossible.
Do they believe that through this global conquest that they have on the drawing boards, that they can subjugate the whole world?
Well, they believe they can do that through the whole communist network, whole communist movement. Of course, they cannot occupy themselves by own troops the whole world. It is impossible. They are 250 million people, but they believe they have enough people who, for revenge, will follow them, will help them control the country. Revenge against the bourgeois, revenge against the middle class, and so not just the rich people. And I think if you look at it, they are right, unfortunately. If you look at what's going on, what people they exploited, what people supported them for revenge or own power, it is not impossible, it is possible.
If they go along with the practice of removing the intelligentsia, the leaders, the bourgeois, I mean, if they do murder a certain of those lists of people that they carry for every nation, then once again they have a new generation of people to indoctrinate and bring up into.
Well, they don't have to murder everybody. It is enough, if we are not talking about war, if we are talking about a revolution situation, it is enough to arrest and murder enough people which will make scare psychologically the others, demoralize the others. Because if you live in the village and from every second family someone was arrested, the two families which are between them, most of them shut up. And if you look at today's situation, unfortunately, it is not just communist, but tragedy is if you take so-called left-wing parties, social democrats, for example, show me one case when they really fight. They always capitulate. Look at before World War I. They had meeting in Europe and they said, we will decide if the imperialist Austria, Germany, and so go to the war. Our members don't go to the military service. They were first who were there. Look at Czechoslovakia, Poland, East Germany. How they already, and it is what I told you, how they prepare people. For example, when was coup d'etat in Prague, or when in East Germany party took power, Poland, Hungary, every time some social democratic leaders participate. For example, in Czechoslovakia, you have many, which I know, they had two party passports. One was social democrat and other was communist in the safe, secretly. Now the party made coup d'etat, he stood up, everybody thought he's anti-communist, social democrat, and he said, oh no, we have to go with the party, we have to go with the Soviet Union. And next day you heard he was member of Central Committee. How he was there. Typical example is President Svoboda, who deceived so much people in 1968. He's supposed to be not communist, and next day he was member of Central Committee. So these things are ready. These people help them, and they know that. They counted with this the so-called quiet, or how you call it, the majority. Pardon me? Silent majority. They are not big fighters, unfortunately. And if they put all these things together, it is no question about that. They can control it. Problem for us is, if you look at typical example, Nicaragua, Cuba, or even Czechoslovakia, in the beginning, we don't do anything. We used some contras, which I I supported them, but I don't think if we give up they can win, unfortunately, and I'm afraid we will give up. So in the beginning we accept these things which just bothers them. We don't do anything and we give them time. People are deceived at this moment because they go with the deception, propaganda, everything will be super, you will have free education or whatever, you know. Ford is rich, you will be rich. Any guy from the street will be actually like Ford, rich, you know. So when people realize it was lie, it is too late, because they already established secret service, control about each citizen, military forces, and it is late for us also. We don't want to go directly to the war, you know, and this is how they counter it. And I'm afraid, if I know, for example, West Germany, how many agents, how many deals they made with social democrats to help them go to power, and so it is every day very, very hard work of Soviet Union. And if somebody say they are just opportunists, it is lie, because the thousands agents who are there for active measures, recruited people, they are there in United States and West Europe just because they are waiting we give them opportunity. Of course it is lie. They create such an opportunity.
They create the opportunity.
And I'm very pessimistic. Look at I tell you example how Soviets operate, part of deception. When started the conflict with China, Czechoslovakia got order participate to create communist parties pro-Chinese in West Europe, France, Belgium, and others, which was fantastic operation from Soviet point of view, because these groups inside the communist parties, they were financed by Czechoslovakia or KGB. And what they did, they collected information who in Italy, French, and so is pro-Chinese. They collected information what orders Chinese give them, what to do inside the party. And they, of course, got orders from Soviet Union how to bother the party leadership. Now the Soviets go to Italian leaders, French leaders, and tell them, look, you don't know if you are on our side or Chinese. We didn't create pro-Soviet party groups because whole party is pro-Soviet. Why they should do that? But look at Chinese, what they do. They want to liquidate you and so, you know. So this is just one small example how they think every day, how they create such a situation and exploit that situation, you know. And I told you about the special department of special propaganda. In Central Committee you have department, administrative organs department, which is again deception name, because the name doesn't have anything to do with administration or what. It is department which control military forces, KGB and justice system, most powerful department. It is really the center from where all the deception and conspiracy goes. The others participate. This department is always under Secretary General. He doesn't like to give it somebody else, because they have also information about his opponents and colleagues, you know. And I was member of the department, and I can tell you, if you have meetings, we have meetings every Saturday morning. It is unbelievable. When in Soviet Union, it is General Savinkin. He is there already many years, and he's still there. What they can think, what they can develop, you know, is these people. The chief of the Department of Special Propaganda in Soviet Union is General Shevchenko. I think he's still there. Ladies and gentlemen, I never saw most clever man than is his man. How, with what ideas he can come for deception and disinformation, and part of strategic maskirovka. You don't have one maneuvers exercise where Defense Council wouldn't decide what will be the deception and maskirovka. No one. So it is national hobby. They cannot exist without that. And of course they don't have Jack Anderson and others, as they call specialists to discover the government secrets in United States. Everybody must shut up. It's nice society.
General Sejna, do you have a statement you'd like to make to the American people by way of concluding this forum?
I can just say one thing. When I defected and I went to United States, and with the help of my son or some friends, I watch TV and look at the newspaper. I almost got heart attack. I was shocked. I thought many of these journalists, or some, I cannot exaggerate, or politicians, are Russian agents. I always talk to John and I said, how such a person can say so? He must be KGB agent. I cannot believe it. The friends from US government told me it will take you 5 years at least to understand America. I'm here 19 years, many things I still don't understand. I understand one thing, many of these people are not KGB spies, they are just stupid. But the final result is same what they are doing. I think the America has the less opportunity to wake up. If we wouldn't wake up now and do what we discuss here for this country, for this security of this country, for the freedom and so on, which means also freedom and security for the whole world finally. If we will wait another 10, 20 years, it will be too late. And I tell you, I hope I will be still in life. I hope little bit it will not happen. American people will wake up and don't let anybody, as I said before, to destroy this country.
Dr. Douglas, I'd like to give you the opportunity to make a statement to the American people.
I very much share, I think, your concern and those of the people in the audience and General Sejna's in terms of some of the directions our nation has been headed. I think Ravel's book or General Sejna's book, We Will Bury You, are very excellent descriptions of what is happening. And one of the things that Ravel points out in the middle of his book that I believe more and more in is that the place the change really has to come from is in the intelligence area, because somehow we have to be awakened to the threat. We have to understand what the other side is up to. Until we do, we will continue to go down this primrose path. In thinking about this, I guess one of the conclusions I've reached over the years is that what we need is not the enormous expenditure of satellites, although I don't want to sell those capabilities short. What we need is just to pay attention to some people who know what the situation is. These people are primarily people who came from behind the Soviet Union and have sought refuge in the United States and become American citizens. I think that the greatest source of information we have are people such as General Sejna, and it is tragic that they're also the most unexploited source and receive the least attention. And I think that what you've seen this afternoon and this evening is just a small example of the information, the understanding, the comprehension they have. And you know, it's really too bad our leaders aren't able to speak to these people and spend time understanding what they have to say. And I certainly take my hat off to General Sejna.
I must say I'm sorry. Joe is too nice to me because we are best friends. As you hear him, I think nobody can say he doesn't understand what is the problem between us in Soviet Union. He understands very good. And I want to say, I'm sorry, just one more thing. Some people say Americans need Pearl Harbor to wake up. But ladies and gentlemen, today Pearl Harbor is nuclear bombs, biological weapons, chemical weapons. And I think it will be very difficult to wake up if we have new Pearl Harbor, unfortunately. And I think Joe is too polite, and he understands very good, except one problem is he's also Cold War. And it is his problem why he cannot, person like him cannot be in some very high position where he can have influence and work for this country.
Well, Dr. Douglas, you say we need a change in intelligence, but everyone who's defected from the Soviet Union has been debriefed by our government. You're not saying that our government doesn't know what you're saying here today. Are you saying we need a change because they need to accept it and deal with it? We need a change in leadership? The information is there.
Very often people are deliberately not debriefed because people do not want the information out. People are not debriefed. To a certain extent they are, but to another extent they are not. And when they are, that information is often squirreled away and does not see its way into the policy circles. Too often the intelligence appears to fit the policy rather than inform the policy.
That is probably the most burdensome statement you've made throughout this afternoon. What would give you hope? You said you didn't have any hope. Is there anything that would give you hope for this change to come about in the next 24 months?
I'll tell you when I see it. It's hard to describe in advance. I'm not sure what it would be. I keep looking for it. Every now and then I think I see a glimmer of something starting, but unfortunately it tends to turn the corner and go a different way. I hope it will come about. I've yet to see it. I tend to be concerned, as other people are, that it will take a very, very great crisis to wake the country up. And what concerns me is that that crisis might be the end of the country. And I certainly hope there is a way that people sooner or later will begin to recognize the threat for what it is, and particularly communism and what it is out to accomplish. I don't see that happening yet. I think the movements, the efforts of people such as yourself and your organization that are willing to expose the people to these topics is probably the best hope that we have at the present time. It's hard to see this type of action taking place in the government. I think it's really the private organizations throughout the country where people begin to recognize that something is not right, that something is wrong, and start to ask what is happening, that are the best hope for the country.
At this juncture, I'd like to say to you, General Jan Sejna and Dr. Joseph Douglas, thank you for being the flame of freedom that speaks at Summit University Forum.
You've been watching Summit University Forum with Elizabeth Clare Potter. Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Elizabeth Clare Potter, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom.